Hi, welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner. I'm a critic, consultant, and programmer based in Toronto, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Andy Hines, a writer and director who's been making short films and music videos for going on 2 decades now. His first feature, Little Lorraine, stars Stephen Amell as Jimmy, a Cape Breton coal miner who takes a job on his Uncle Huey's lobster boat to keep the lights on after the mine closes, only to discover Huey, played by the formidable Stephen McHattie, has roped him into some very unsavory business. The movie has its world premiere at TIFF this Friday, September 5th at 5:30 p.m. at the Scotiabank 1, with a second screening Saturday, September 6th at 11:30 a.m. in the Scotiabank 13. Go to tiff.net and search Little Lorraine for tickets. Andy chose another first feature, Sexy Beast, Jonathan Glazer's ferocious 2000 drama starring Ray Winston as a retired gangster now living quietly with his wife and friends on the Andalusian coast, whose peace of mind is disrupted by the news that the fearsome Don Logan is coming to recruit him for one last job. Don Logan is played by Ben Kingsley in a performance that is entirely unlike any other performance Ben Kingsley has given, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you should probably watch Sexy Beast before listening to this episode. There's a reason it's a classic. This is Someone Else's Movie.
You know, Sexy Beast is a seminal film for me, not only as a filmmaker for style and technique, but also as just a film goer and as an observer and lover of movies. It deeply affected me as a viewer the first time I saw it. I thought it was just so stunning and incredible and different. And especially as well in kind of the canon of gangster films, you know, it is uniquely its own. And Ben Kingsley has transformed in that film, as he is in so many, into just the way that he embodies Don, this character, is to me as incredible and different as he is as Gandhi. You know, it's like the most Ben Kingsley thing ever to see him as this character.
Yeah, I saw it when it played TIFF in 2000, and it was really fun feeling the audience be off balance almost immediately, just not knowing what to do, not knowing how to process the performances. Like, who is Ray Winston in the first place? He wasn't really that well known here, despite having worked for decades already. And the monologue pulls you in, and then you could just feel the tension escalate when Kingsley showed up instead of release. Like, it just keeps getting worse as an experience for the audience, which is absolutely marvelous because it puts us in Gall's head.
Yeah. It just builds and builds and builds. And I mean, right from I don't know how we can quote this film without cursing. I don't know if there's cursing on your podcast, but
go for it.
You know, from the very opening scene of him just cooking like a fried egg on a frying pan next to the pool, and with that voiceover, like, oh, it's sweltering, so hot, fucking cooking egg out here. It's just amazing, you know. And you're like, who is this guy?
Yeah, the confidence that Glazer, I mean, he'd made music videos, he'd worked, but this was his first feature. And the confidence he had to just hold the audience in the first frame and just keep pushing it, right? Like, he's almost mixing the slang in the VO to be not incoherent, but oppressive. Like when Ray Winston says baking, it comes out as biting. And it just it's guttural internal monologue. And people were straining. It was great. They were like leaning in to figure out what he was saying and what it meant. And then you sort of acclimatize yourself to the delivery and to the experience. Yeah, it is. It's like, also, and to, you know, not to take anything away from Glazer, but the script, like by Louis Mellis and David Sinto, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing Mellis's name. It's like, I looked around afterwards. I remember it's like, is this the first time someone's applied like Pinter or Stoppard to the gangster genre? Because it was so relatively recent that the Lad movies had started with Guy Ritchie a couple of years earlier, and then suddenly here's this. And it's all a reaction to Tarantino, obviously, and the reactivation of pulpy crime stories. But it's so aggressively formal, right? Like the language and the word choices in that ping-ponging dialogue where you can't tell if it's Pinter or Stoppard or just some new hybrid. And watching it again, it's just
Yeah.
mesmerizing. Like you're pulled right into the way people just stare at each other and say words. They're not having a conversation, they're volleying back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that in a lot of ways, Guy Ritchie owes so much to not necessarily to Jonathan Glazer. I think they have actually quite a different style, but to Sexy Beast itself in the early workings of his Lock, Stock, and Snatch, and then to a lesser extent everything else. But really, just that idea of like, I feel like Sexy Beast opened the door for those films, for him to sort of dive in head first like that.
Yeah. I mean, Lock, Stock pre-existed, but I think you're right. I think Sexy Beast legitimizes what he's doing in a way that Lock, Stock didn't, because it was so, like, it looked like a Gap commercial half the time. He was playing with the visuals and
Oh, that's interesting. What is Lock, Stock, like 98 or
98, 99. Yeah.
no way?
Yeah. Yeah. Just before.
Wow, wow, wow. Riding on that same wave. Oh, you know what? Yeah, 'cause it came out in 99.
Yeah. I think it was made
Yeah.
in 98 and took a little longer because Polygram picked it up, or Gram was like one of those little tiny indie labels grabbed it and positioned it very, very carefully, which took a while. I know it opened in the UK before it opened in the States. And maybe there were a couple of festival stops. But yeah, they arrived. I mean, they were within a year of each other, certainly. But
Yeah.
I think without Sexy Beast, I don't know that you get something like Revolver or Rock and Rolla, where Ritchie's like
Oh, yeah.
trying to one up what Glazer did.
Yeah. 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 And I feel like Sexy Beast was sort of effortless in its coolness. And yeah, Jonathan Glazer's easily one of my favorite directors, and I've always admired and looked to, coming out of music videos myself. I really always, with the dream to feature films as the goal. I really always looked at Jonathan Glazer and Spike Jonze, Michel Gondry, these sort of music video come feature directors as inspiration. And but yeah, Jonathan Glazer, he only ever did 10 music videos. I've probably done 70. And I always really admired his methods and that period, as well as of being able to make music videos and earn a proper living on it, and to have what at times were feature film budgets nowadays,
Yeah.
to produce a music video. It's amazing to see, his career.
I mean, there's a level of artistry in any length, right? At any length of time. I remember I had a conversation a couple of years ago with Craig Gillespie, who came out through commercial, like literally making 30-second commercials before he ended up making features. And he, even he doesn't fully understand, I don't think, like how efficient you have to be to tell a story in 30 seconds and how that translates to simply just knowing the best two setups to land the same point in a given scene in a feature. And it's all just part of a general nature of storytelling that extends outwards to a longer form, right? As long as you have a story worth telling, you can fill the space. But the language, the geography, the narrative, all those things, I think you hone. The shorter you work, the sharper you become. And music video absolutely is part of that too.
Yeah, and I really feel like my time in music videos was so specifically thought out and utilized by myself to work as a place to practice everything that I wanted to do in features and experiment with, whether it was just ideas or scenes or even shots and sequences. I really never made a music video that wasn't in some capacity, cutting my teeth and sharpening my knife for features, which inevitably with Little Lorraine, it really changed the outcome of me walking into set that first day, and you know, even just having my heart rate remain the same, you know, and to not, you know, I have friends who have features that, you know, they hadn't made anything in 5 years, and they were, you know, really worked up that first morning walking on the set because they were in a way out of practice physically with the machine of making stuff. And I'm so grateful to have been able to have as, you know, successful a short form career that was relatively constant to get that practice in for longer form production.
I was going to ask, I mean, Little Lorraine is a fairly ambitious narrative, but it feels like it takes place in a very small space physically. I mean, like in terms of the construction of the world and the shoots, there's 4 or 5 primary locations and a boat. And it moves very, very quickly, but it does feel like each one of those, and I promise we'll get back to Sexy Beast, but it does feel like each one of those sections can be broken off into a private narrative. Like there's always the relationship between a man and his wife, or a man and his family, or a man and his job, and the pieces of the puzzle are the things that slowly add up. But it's all about the way the protagonist tries to, I'm sorry, I'm being vague about this just because I don't want to spoil anything for anybody who hasn't seen the film yet, but it's all about the way the protagonist has compartmentalized all these pieces of himself and then just ultimately can't keep the walls apart. Does it feel like you're building small narratives in that way? And does that weirdly line up to you the same way it lined up to me watching Sexy Beast again and thinking, oh, so Gull is doing the same exact thing. Like he is juggling the pieces of his life and trying to make it all make sense, even as it just steamrolls towards something truly terrible. It's a different ending. The whole movie is different, but yeah, there's a rhythm that I recognized.
There is definitely a parallel though in characters, and also even just a parallel in the type of character stories that I want to tell or that I really enjoy exploring and unfolding, you know.
Yeah.
And there's an absolute parallel, and I think it goes right back to sort of my DNA as a filmmaker that, you know, the type of characters that we see in Sexy Beast really speak to me across all the stories that I have kind of a slate of 9 films that I'll make that are all sort of interwoven that share certain character qualities and certain character arcs that are consequential to me, and in a lot of ways, like the DNA of some of those characters, you know, it comes from Sexy Beasts in many ways, and the conflicted criminal is, I think, core to my storytelling. Or the criminal who is inadvertently becomes a criminal, or the citizen who gets involved in something on accident, or is pressured into, or tricked into, or the criminal who only knows crime but really doesn't want to, you know. And this sort of inherent kind of, I'm sure you're familiar with the Eric Bana film Chopper from Australia. You know, this story, it really has a through line with Sexy Beast as well, with this sort of criminal type character, where someone who's doing horrible stuff, but you know, will then drive the person to the hospital after, or they apologize before, during, and after the act, and you know, this kind of thing, and I really love that, because there's nothing interesting to me about a character who commits crimes or violence completely willingly. Like there has to be a component that is at odds with that, right? And we see that so much in Sexy Beast. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in Gull, we have someone who doesn't want to be there, right? He's sort of backed out of everything and freed himself in a way. So here we have like a career criminal who knows better and doesn't want it anymore, resisting the pull of someone who knows nothing else. And like the more time we spend with Don Logan, the more time we realize he really doesn't know anything else. He has no culture, he has no life, he has no existence other than the next thing. Like he's the shark who shows up to ruin the vacation, the seaside, and they are at the seaside, so it is actually a legitimate threat. But the sense too that you're watching a negotiation within Gaul between, like, Don may as well not even exist, right? He is simply the past come back to remind Gaul of the person he used to be, and then he doesn't want to be anymore, and to resist that push and pull and the relationship as it plays out. That's why, like, just watching it again this time, in addition to the large bunny that, like the monster bunny, 2001 was a really great time for monster bunnies for some bizarre reason.
Right. Or badgers as well. Like,
yeah,
I'm trying to think of,
yeah. But watching it this time, like, Jesus, 25 years later, with the sense that everything in it is both a symbol and practical reality. Like, it's all symbolic. Everything is symbolic. Gaul's relationship, his wife is a former adult film star and presumably sex worker. It comes up here and there in the dialogue, but it's never actually confirmed. And yet other people are also trading sex for favors and information and money throughout the entire picture. There's all of these transactional relationships, but also they are really happening as at the same time. They are metaphors for what Gaul is trying to leave behind and what he's trying to pursue now. Like, he just wants to be himself, alone with his wife and his friends, quiet, enjoying the spoils of the things that they used to do. And then his past shows up and it's furious and it doesn't want to take no for an answer. And he's absolutely not the only person who can do this, but he's the person the past wants. And it was remarkable watching it play on two tracks this time. Either I missed it completely when I was 32, or it just blew past me, or so it's the same thing, he's missing it completely, or it just wasn't there until, I don't know. I honestly don't know. It didn't feel that layered the first time through. Like, the simplicity of it was the power, and now it's like, holy shit, there's this whole other thing going on. I'm a bad critic, is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. No, it's really real because for the first time I watch it to the last time I watch it, it is a different experience. The same feelings on the and the similar feelings exist from those first few times, but it is much more layered than maybe we presume at first viewing.
So when was the first time you saw it? Was it 2000, or, I mean, you're a little younger than I am.
It was 2003.
Okay.
Yeah, 2003. I was going to school for a year at a college in Vermont, and I was working in the local video shop, and I was taken by the cover of it, with no knowledge of really anything about it, and I took the DVD home, and just had my mind blown.
Oh, well, that's the best possible way to see it. I went to film school technically, but working in a video store in the late 80s was my film school. It was just incredible. Just the fact that you could, even then, just stumble over something that you'd never heard of and take it home. And, I think we've really lost, I mean, it's not new, right? The death of physical media, or the consumption effect of physical media. Now that everything's reduced to a tile that you just click past, it doesn't have the same impact. But God, holding something in your hand and thinking, oh, this sounds cool, I will watch this tonight because I don't have anything else scheduled. That was the way. And the world of, Oh, I'm very jealous that you got to do that later, when there was like everything was on widescreen and properly mastered, as opposed to the VHS days.
Yeah, well, I was deep in the VHS days, and I do miss physical media. I do try. I still have my Blu-ray collection and my Blu-ray player, and I do. I still have my CD collection, much to the chagrin of my wife, and where I can continue to move it around with us. But I'm deeply connected to physical media still. and really have such an appreciation for being in this kind of transitional era of not just only knowing digital consumption and being digital native and only knowing sort of Netflix. I actually really loved getting DVDs from Netflix when Netflix was just first started.
Yeah, I mean, it made sense at the time.
For sure.
I think it still makes sense, really.
It still makes sense.
Yeah,
Norm,
it'll be
it still
rediscovered.
makes sense.
Oh, I know. I have to believe that. Hey, it's Norm interrupting my own show to bring you up to speed on Shiny Things, my newsletter about physical media, culture, and the odd streaming project. Last week, I tackled the new releases of The Phoenician Scheme and Vermilio from Universal and Criterion, respectively, and I spun up the new Criterion Blu-ray of Saving Face and the ViaVision imprint box set of Blue and Fade In. Sign up for a 14-day free trial at shiny-things.ghost.io or find a link at the Semcast Blue Sky account. You like reading about movies? I like writing about them. Come check it out. And speaking of physical media, like Sexy Beast was only released on Blu-ray in North America as a limited run, like a 3,000 piece edition from Twilight Time. It has yet to be reissued, which I find bizarre. Although I guess less bizarre now that I understand that it was Fox Searchlight, which is now Disney, and Disney's in no hurry, I suppose, to put it out. Yep. But Glazer's star has risen to such a point that I was assuming Criterion would be jumping all over it, or someone else would at this point, to do a proper special edition. It's just become an artifact in a weird way that now when you say, oh, I'm doing an episode on Sexy Beast, people go, oh, right, I forgot about that movie. It's like, it's really good. Don't forget about it.
Yeah. I feel the same way about Layer Cake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one had Daniel Craig to give it another boost, right? After he became Bond, it got back into the world. But yeah. So do you have a specific affinity for the early 2000s gangster, like the English gangster pictures, or is it more wide ranging?
Yeah, I there was a period of time in my teenhood that I lived in England. Mm-hmm. So I have a personal connection to the culture and to just really I definitely have an attachment to the culture that was a gateway for me to even when I moved back home to Canada, that I never really stopped looking into it. So it remained present. And also, Ben Kingsley, and when I saw that cover and it was Ben Kingsley on the cover of the DVD, I thought, oh, I don't know how I never saw this, and so yeah.
Even in the rear view, the cast is phenomenal. It's like James Fox is perfectly used, Ian McShane is perfectly used, but Kingsley, I had seen him play tougher characters, I suppose, but they were always more intellectual, more conniving. This one speaks to his personal obsession with authenticity, which I find fascinating because Ben Kingsley is almost never playing his authentic self. He's always finding a mask or a form or some way to shape a character. I know I've told this story before, but when he was playing, I think it was Bruce Pendleton, he was playing a chess master in Searching for Bobby Fischer, and I did the junket for that. So we were talking about his inspirations, and he said he decided that he was going to play this guy as Samuel Beckett, and have the intellectual authority and the poise and the specificity. And when you watch the movie, you actually can believe that this guy is like an intellectual, an absolute champion of style and personal poise. And then they brought Bruce Pandolfini in, and he basically looked and sounded like Alan Dershowitz in 1990. And it's like, oh, okay, so you just chose this for this guy, and you're playing a real person, but you've inhabited him as other person who is also a real person, or was a real person, but is absolutely not in any way authentic or accurate. And we talked about it it was a respectful conversation. He didn't think I was attacking him for his choices. I just want to know how he got there. And he ended up saying, like, this felt authentic to me. This is how I had to play him. And so I have yet to see him again long enough to ask him about Don Logan, but weirdly, Don Logan feels like the most authentic performance he's given of himself, like that sense of direction and need and understanding of nothing but the goal.
Yeah.
That feels like Ben Kingsley.
And one thing that is so particularly amazing to me as well about not only Don Logan, the character, and Ben Kingsley's performance of him in Sexy Beast, but the script of Sexy Beast is performed verbatim.
Yep.
There's no impromptu or any type of every line of that screenplay is performed as written, including his outburst at the house towards the end of the film when he says no, 45 or 50 times.
Yeah.
It's the exact amount as written, and he finds the rhythm of how to say it from the page. And it's one of the greatest examples for me of, I mean, obviously Chinatown is as well in the same sort of verbatim script type scenario, but to see this sort of unhinged performance in a film where it feels as though it could be have moments of being just made up on the spot, or how it felt best in to the actor in that moment, and then you find out after that it's actually just a carbon copy of the screenplay brought to life on screen. It's just incredible to me.
Yeah, he has the energy. And I think, too, part of that comes from Ray Winston being so good at being physically afraid of Don. Like in his performance, like we understand that there's a volatility that even the other cast members are afraid of. So it feels like it could explode. I mean, it's an explosive performance. He could go off at any moment. And watching the places that Don directs his anger, because he this I think is Kingsley's addition rather than it's something from the screenplay. He chooses what to be angry at. Like he makes the choices. You can see it in his eyes when he's going to dig in and be upset about something. And it's always something trivial because it lets him release whatever rage he's got in him in the moment.
Yeah, Gail's the eye contact going like off him,
Yeah.
not like the perfectly directed attention to him. Yeah, it's masterful.
Mm-hmm. And the thing on the plane too, where he just explodes at the.
Oh, that's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And how he gets out of it.
Exactly, right? Like he has just enough savvy, just enough intelligence to figure out a way out that lets him avoid being arrested or avoid being identified or flagged in any other way. He's not like, that's what's so fascinating, the contradiction of somebody who's clever enough to do that and have the backstory or have some excuse in the back of his mind that he can drop in a moment like this, but also just incapable of controlling himself. And then, of course, it turns out that the whole reason he does that is so he can stay and do what he does. It's all like it's either all premeditated or his impulses only ever go in one direction. But either way, it's just such a fascinating contradiction.
And I know that this conversation that we're having about Sexy Beast is sort of there is a presumption we're making here that all of your listeners have seen the film, and I hope that certainly they'll hold this conversation in their mind when they turn this podcast episode off and then immediately open Sexy Beast up and watch it. But that scene in particular on the airplane is. I guess it's the only scene in the whole film with Ben Kingsley where, for a moment, you see this vulnerability. You get this glimpse while he's pretending to be someone else that he's really had his feelings.
Yeah,
And like it's so tremendous how when he's talking to this Spanish detective and recanting what this situation is, that that you see, oh, this guy reasonable? Like, and it's just so incredible. And then you see him get out of it, and you're like, wait, this guy is just the master manipulator beyond any. it's just so tremendous, the level of which that manipulation unfolds, and throughout the film, obviously, but in his attempts to get Gale to do the job.
Yeah.
But yeah, during COVID, I made a series of memes in my darkest hours of COVID times that were all scenes from Sexy Beast that I put humorous captions to.
Oh yeah.
And posted them on Instagram. And I look back at them recently, and they just crack me up so much about whether it's like, being in deep quarantine at that time, like day 130 something, and or like getting job offers for me to go to Florida and do music videos or commercials because Florida was the only state in the country that was still allowing film production. And it was like, beyond like whether you wore a mask or not, it was like, are you willing to go to Florida and do a production? And I was pairing it with these Gale, Don Logan scenes. Do the job. Do the job. I can't. You will. You will. Anyway,
I can absolutely see you relating to that through Sexy Beast.
Yeah. Him looking in the mirror, shaving his head when he pees on the carpet. It's like there's every scene of that film, like you said earlier, to bring it back to what you said earlier, of this idea of like how it feels almost like compartmentalized, like how you can take each section of it as its own thing, and you really can, because there's such levels of engagement and entertainment just as a viewer with no context and no. And I think sometimes now, maybe more than ever in the history of cinema, that we're in this place where you can't do that with a lot of contemporary cinema, or certainly the cinema that gets pushed to the top of the tiles on whatever streaming platform you see them on, and I really appreciate films that have a twist and a turn to every scene, and that there's kind of a beginning and a middle and an end to every scene, and that it's not just about the sprawling arc of something,
Yeah, the idea that we should now be making movies and telling stories that you don't need to pay your full attention to, for example, when there's nothing more satisfying in this movie than just looking at the actors acting. Like, why would you want to look away? It's the whole point of this is to be immersed in the story, in this dynamic between whoever's on screen and whoever wants Don Logan to go away.
Yeah, and at times you can't, right? You just can't look away in some of these great films that you just I couldn't imagine checking my phone or existing in a second screen capacity of where you're expected. There's a presumption that you will be on your phone for 100% of the time, and you're just sort of listening to the audiobook version of the movie that's playing in front of you. And I don't really, in my own work, I don't really have any plans to really pursue that style of filmmaking, because I still believe in making films that are entertaining enough to hold your attention, no matter what sort of mass media has done to manipulate your attention. I still desire to make work that can grip you.
Yeah, well, and that does sort of bring me to Little Lorraine, which is a study of a community, a study of somebody who is hooked into a situation that is very easy to go along with, but still wrong. And then the sort of compounding of the wrongness that just carries on. And you have in Uncle Huey, in the Stephen McHattie character, Stephen McHattie being, friend of the show and all, but he is someone who is the opposite of Don Lemon, because he wheedles and he doesn't browbeat. he just invites you to do the thing that he wants you to do. And then there's another thing, and there's another thing. And it feels very East Coast to me, this sort of friendly, come on by, we'll see what happens sensibility to it. But also there's this really snaky malevolence that McCaddy has behind his eyes all the time. You don't trust him from the second you see him. But because he's in a community where everybody knows everybody else and everybody tries to be friendly and helpful, and everybody else is in crisis, he's offering a way forward. People listen, and then it all goes to hell.
Yeah. And there is an aspect of that, that I always wanted to have him kind of step into the movie, and for us to kind of question him from the first time we see him. And some people will see it and some people won't, but even the way that he does the sign of the cross, and he just kind of does this sort of circular gesture that is nonsense on his chest, is sort of separates him right away from this, quite a religious community. And yeah, he's a kind of an alien, and outside of the community from the beginning. And we learn as things unfold that he's kind of always been that way. But what can you do with family? When your family is saying, "Oh, well, I've got an opportunity for you," you have to sort of inquire on it, right? And
yeah, and the moral complications that come from that are very simple, very direct, and the kind of thing that, speaking to the compartmentalization we were talking about earlier, the kind of thing that could be resolved if people simply told the truth, but by the time it becomes a complication, they can't. And so everybody's trapped in their own little box and waiting for things to go wrong. I was kind of wondering if that's what the sort of prophetic dream that keeps recurring, because there's also the dream in Sexy Beast, which they're both nightmares. They're not dreams. But they're in Sexy Beast, it feels like an ironic comeuppance, and in here it's more like a warning. But they sort of appear in the same spots of tension. They're almost like act breaks and deployed very strategically. Was that something that you borrowed from Glazer as well? Or?
I think probably unconsciously, but just through the effects of his narrative style and the influence he has on me, consciously or subconsciously. I think that my work is really kind of a combination of kind of early Jonathan Glazer, this Indian director Tarsem Singh, with a dash of Werner Herzog, and then something that I've been working on myself, which I can't explain or express, but is somehow a expression of my own ideas and feelings amidst this. But I think that I think that there's a wonderful, as sort of a narrative device, I feel like magical realism and dream sequences and excuse me, flipping what is real and what isn't on its head as often as possible is something that is kind of near and dear to me, and something that I've explored a lot in my short form work, and kind of the manipulation of time and in that experience for the audience, and it's something that is important to me that I will always explore in my work.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, there are moments in Little Lorraine. I'm thinking about the way the cloud rises after the mine explosion, where just they seem impossible. It feels like you're witnessing something not just larger than life, but something that shouldn't be happening. Like, it's obscene. We see it through the perspective of the townspeople, the wives worrying about their husbands, and it's this awful, awful disaster that we are removed from as an audience. Yeah. But then later, it's echoed, like the damage that does echoes through the entire story in really simple workaday ways, where this is closed or this is closing or this thing doesn't happen anymore because of this one thing, and people are going to Westray because it's safer. It's not safer, it's no safer, but it's where the work is. And this sort of inciting incident. I hate that phrase because everything is an inciting incident. It depends on where your story starts. But this mine explosion is this massive, massive tragedy that we are slightly removed from, but it never stops echoing through the story.
Yeah, and I really try and give context as well to, through the sort of opening credits of the film and the sort of introduction to the film, to give people that have no context to this type of a community, or, there's obviously a number of states in the U.S. that would really relate to this story.
Oh, yeah.
In the sense that coal mining is dangerous, and coal mining is dangerous for the environment and everyone involved at a human level that is underground toiling to get that coal above the surface. And accidents happen. The accidents range in severity, but the accident in this film is huge and real, and certainly happened many times, and including in the Maritimes and in the States. Methane explosions in a coal mine are unfortunately something that does happen, and in this case it disrupts the entire community to a point that it's like everybody's involved, and it's like many people in the community, most of which are working in the coal mine or adjacent to it. And if it shuts overnight, you really get into a position of really, having to do whatever it takes. And we see this as a parallel story in the 1960s, in the early 1960s in Los Angeles, with the automotive factories that were there. That you could be there was the rise of kind of gang culture in Los Angeles came out of the early days of the factories, the automotive factories closing in Los Angeles, and people being out of work kind of overnight, but they still had 4 or 5 children to provide for. And it's like, well, what do you do when there isn't another job that you are being offered? It's not like you can just move to another factory, et cetera. And so we see this parallel of kind of desperation of what can come next,
Yeah. Is that your next project? That sounds like something you've thought about deeply.
It's not, but it is something that I'm super interested in, and kind of the 1950s, 1960s history of the United States, and from an industrial capacity, and the redlining of the states, and how kind of culture and community was formed, is super interesting to me.
Oh, cool! I'd love to see that. And it's something that I think that that's a subject that hasn't really been explored beyond Who Framed Roger Rabbit sort of touches on it, but that's about it, really.
Yeah. And that as well is a seminal movie to me, because that was the first movie I saw in theaters.
Oh,
and it
yeah.
was on my list for you because of I'm sure that, of course, people would have spoken about it on your show before, but I had to put it in my list because it's the first film I saw in theaters, and it was the first time that movie and the magic of cinema overwhelmed me, where I really couldn't tell what was real or not, and being a young kid, I was instantly fell in love with cinema, and that was my gateway.
Yeah. Oh my God, that must have been wonderful. I was already a whole grown up, but Seth Worley also brought it up as a possible earlier this month, and he went with Men in Black. So I think the two divergent paths here, one going for Men in Black and one going for Sexy Beast, is kind of a perfect bow on it. They're both cinema.
Yeah, absolutely.
My thanks to Andy Hines, whose debut feature Little Lorraine has its world premiere at TIFF this Friday, September 5th at 5:30 p.m. at the Scotiabank 1, and a second screening Saturday, September 6th at 11:30 a.m. in the Scotiabank 13. You can get tickets by going to tiff.net and searching for Little Lorraine. Thanks also to Winnie Wong. She knows what she did. You can find Andy on Instagram at andyhines.tv, and you can find Sexy Beast on Blu-ray in a Twilight Time edition that's sadly out of print, but the DVD from 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment is still out there. It's also streaming on the Criterion Channel and available to rent or buy on various VOD services across North America. You can find me on Blue Sky at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast there at Semcast, S-E-M-Cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. The first year of the show is still available for just $20 at payhip.com/semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 41 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. And check out my newsletter, Shiny Things, at shiny-things.ghost.io. I think you'll enjoy it. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it, or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been listening. Every little bit helps. It truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, get all the boosters you can. I'll see you next week.